Hello and welcome. My name is Elise Hartman. I'm the Director of Collective Learning and Resources here at 313 Reads. 313 Reads is a coalition committed to working side by side in collective impact with citywide, statewide, and national partners toward literacy access, equity, and justice to support grade level reading. 313 Reads is dedicated to mobilizing alongside our community to ensure literacy equity so that all students are reading at grade level by the end of third grade. Today, I'm joined by two amazing guests, Leah van Belle and Annie Spear. The topic, research-based, data-informed, and culturally sustaining practices in literacy equity. Leah is the Executive Director of 313 Reads and MRA President, Michigan Reading Association, and Annie is a literacy professional at MAISA. I'm excited to listen and learn. Leah and Annie, the floor is yours, and would you start by introducing yourselves, please?
Sure, I'm Leah. Welcome. And in addition to the roles that Elise mentioned, I serve on the Early Literacy Task Force for the state of Michigan. Really grateful to be in that space with Annie and to be collaborating here today. I also am a former teacher, former literacy coach, former literacy professor, but I'm someone who realized I really wanted to do more community-based literacy work, and that's why I'm with 313 Reads. And probably most importantly, I am the mother of a third grader who attends a public school in Detroit and is a neurodivergent little human. So that's a little bit about me. Annie, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you, Elise. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Annie Spear, and I have the honor to be a professional learning coordinator at MAISA. So the work I currently do supports the 31A grant in order to provide professional learning to coaches around the state of Michigan. And prior to this, I was an early literacy coach at Core ISD, and I'm on loan from them now to MAISA, and had the opportunity to work at CMU and start a literacy center there to really work with the community. So when we're talking about community-based projects, that was one of my most favorite things to do, was to start that literacy center with some colleagues at CMU and really bring children to campus from Mount Pleasant, and then have the opportunity to work with their families and think about how we could support them and find out just how we could sort of bridge that gap between what was happening on campus and what was happening right there in Mount Pleasant in the elementary schools. So I am a former elementary school teacher. I've taught third grade, just 1 year at third grade, but I taught first grade for 8.5 years in Massachusetts. And then when I moved to Michigan, did third grade, and really then moved into, I just finished my second master's in reading when I moved here, and had the chance to be a literacy specialist and a literacy coach in schools. So anytime I get to talk about literacy, I get very passionate, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today about ways that we can work together to support your community and the really important work that you're doing at 313 Reads.
Thanks, Annie. 313 Reads, I want to frame just a little bit about 313 Reads. We are a collective impact coalition, so we don't serve children and families directly. What we do is we support those who do serve them. And Elise, could you show that slide? It won't show for me now, sorry. Thank you. These are some of our partners in the work. They include orgs at the state, systems level, funders, universities. They also include a lot of folks doing that boots on the ground work of serving children with literacy supports, tutoring, and interventions in summer and out of school time programming. And one of the things that's really key to our work is bringing those partners together for more aligned and coordinated efforts. Because we know that when we think about social justice, that literacy is key to that, right? It's connected to so many life outcomes, and we all center that. And some of the things that we do for that, we convene collective learning together, we convene a common assessment, we collaboratively fund and engage in policy advocacy. And so for a lot of those program partners that are doing that boots on the ground work of serving with reading tutoring, you know, some of them have been serving families for generations. They are moving mountains every day for children and families. They're doing deeply powerful work. And, they've said, we also want to support literacy. They see the importance of literacy in our community. And we are really excited about that. And what we want to do as a coalition is say, great, you're as passionate about literacy as we are. How can we ensure that as a literacy champion or a community-based literacy educator, that you have what you need to have the impact that we want to have together? So folks who are in school districts, they have access to a lot of professional development, both at the building level, the district level, ISD, literacy coaching, a lot of professional development built in. But most community-based literacy educators have no access to professional learning unless it's convened by their organization. And most of them just don't have the capacity for that. And professional learning is also really expensive, right? So definitely an investment worth every penny, but expensive. So as a coalition, that's very important for us to come together. And Elise is as she mentioned, the director of collective learning and resources. But what we really want to center even more is how we elevate together practices that are research-based, data-informed, and culturally sustaining. And so we're really excited about the Literacy Essentials and the potential to have that really inform the work, inform the work of community-based literacy work. Much of the work, in fact, most of it with the Literacy Essentials has been focused on school-based spaces. And so we want to say, how can we ensure that community-based educators who are incredibly important in a city like ours, where in our largest public school district, only 9% of third graders are reading at grade level as compared to the state level, which is about 44. So there's a tremendous need. And teachers are doing so many amazing things in the classroom, but community needs to be a part of the solution too. So the Literacy Essentials we're really excited about because, we feel that this provides a really nice pathway in to giving folks the tools. And I was so excited, Annie, when I saw the flyer for this series that you're convening and bringing in the work of some of the folks that you're going to talk about, and just really wanted to learn more about it and to engage our coalition members in that work. So we're really grateful to have you here today, and I'm going to pass it to you to tell us a little bit more about it now.
Thanks, Leah. There were so many things that you said that were just resonating with me and so excited. And as Leah said earlier, we are both have the opportunity and privilege to serve on the Early Literacy Task Force. And that's really important work. And it was from the Early Literacy Task Force that these essentials came about. And I call that and coaching the silver lining of the third grade reading legislation, which was put into practice around children being retained if they did not pass the M-STEP statewide testing in third grade. And so we actually know there's no good evidence that retention works. But we have very good evidence that if we as teachers or anyone who is serving children, if we're using research-supported practices, we actually can help children to learn to read and to feel efficacious in their reading and be excited about reading, because reading is exciting and it is the gateway to everything that we want to do in life. And so we really want to make sure all children have access to that. So if you don't mind, Alice, showing the essential instructional practices document, in particular, what we're looking at right here is the K-3 essential practices. That's the work that all the coaches in our network, they mostly support the K-3 essentials, but the legislation changed a bit so that they were able to support that we can do pre-kindergarten to K-3 with the coaching grant. And what these are, there are 10 practices. And if we did these essential practices every day in our classrooms, they're all research supported, and we can move the needle for children and help them to be learning literacy and feeling engaged in literacy. And the work that you're talking about doing is just really important. I am a mom myself, and I have two children who are 11 and 13 who are, the joy of my life. And part of the reason I even got to be literacy coaching is this job came open. And that's what made me leave CMU, is I thought I'm helping other people's children and working and supporting the tutoring. We're actually doing tutoring at the Literacy Center, training our teacher candidates to be tutoring children and getting just really learning what the research supported practices could be. But I wasn't getting to put my own kids to bed and read them stories at night because I was commuting, 80 miles back from CMU to come back up north. And so once this opportunity came open, I was celebrating because what we have in this document, it gives everybody across the state the same information. And we know that it's been vetted by just amazing researchers who have led the work from the beginning, but specifically Dr. Nell K. Duke and Dr. Tanya Wright have been constantly supporting the work of this. And they have lots of people they reach out to, but they continue to support us in our coaching network. And so this document is something I just want you to know about so that when we talk about what are the research supported practices, things we will talk about today are linked to that. One of the other pieces that I had mentioned to both Alice and to Leah was some professional learning we did around a particular resource. And so the next resource we're going to look at is from Dr. Sharon Walpole, who works at the University of Delaware, and her book is called How to Plan Differentiated Reading Instruction. The reason I mention this book is just because everything is laid out, and I think that's on our next slide. I don't know. Oh, thank you so much. So everything's laid out in this book, and the things really align to what we want for the essential instructional practices, but it's like this much of your day. It's like 15-minute lessons. So it's not everything that we need. But we know that for kids to be successful in literacy, they need to know how to read. They need to know what to do when they see letters on a page. They need to be able to break the letters apart and put them together to be able to read them. And so what she does in this book, that's like it's like a $30 book, but it has all these lessons built out in it that give us a research support. And it's been really highly proven to support children in Delaware. It's also supported children in Georgia. It supported children actually nationwide. And in fact, was even mentioned in the most recent video, the Right to Read video that was put out. The one thing that there were some things in there I was very excited about. But one of the things that just made my heart happy about that is a literacy coach brought Dr. Walpole's free curriculum bookworms to a school and was doing these differentiated reading instruction lessons. And that's how that new teacher felt good about her teaching. And she was doing something that helped her kids start to have more success. So I bring that as a resource to you. And that learning that we did wasn't fully open to everybody, but Dr. Walpole does have resources that are freely available. And what it inspired us in the Literacy Coaching Network and throughout the state to happen is a lot of school districts who didn't have a good phonics program to help kids have been starting to implement this. And then on the heels of this professional learning we did around that, just to help people feel better and I am not a scripted person, really. Like I am very let's be authentic, but there are certain things in a classroom and part of the day that if you can do them scripted, but still make them engaging, we know that they can make a difference. So I had to practice those lessons a lot so that I was saying the same thing because I'm like, this is the right way to do it. Like I have to keep repeating it, but they make a difference for kids. And there was one school I was helping to support them. It's like a side note, but they were going to hold back like 16 kindergartners at this district who weren't doing well according to the different measures they had. And they had this philosophy: if we hold them back in kindergarten, they won't have to be held back in a few years in third grade if they don't pass the M-STEP, which was, to me, it didn't make a lot of sense that we would hold them back in kindergarten and assume that they won't pass the M-STEP. And they were kind and let me come in and use this work. And then we actually were able to put kids in the right groups. Some children were not even in the right places to do learning. And out of the 16, I think 4 of the kids ended up being held back, which is still too much in kindergarten, but it made a difference. So I'm telling you that not just from a, this book says it is, and there's this research study, but I actually did use it and model it with teachers and have had lots of different coaches and teachers saying it helps. And as a side note, I don't make money from saying this. I love that it's a free resource that you can go and get online, the lessons that go with bookworms, and then buy a $30 book. So,
Annie?
Yes.
One thing too, I just want to lift up is that folks might want to think about with this book. One thing that was really exciting to me is there's been so much about movement away from guided reading to more research-based practices. And what I love is that, and for a lot of folks, understandably, it's sort of like, oh, so now I'm not supposed to do guided reading. Well, what am I supposed to do, right? So we take something out and it's sort of like, well, then what replaces it? And so this model of differentiated reading instruction really provides a very research-based alternative to that I think folks who I think carries over a lot of the things that folks have loved about guided reading and will feel familiar in some ways. So I really love that it sort of comes into that gap, if you will, that was left when many spaces around the country, and also it's growing in Michigan, are saying, it's not research-based, we're moving away from that.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, you're right, Leah. Some people are saying that means we don't meet with small groups. It's like, no, no, no. Like, it's not at all that you're not meeting with small groups. And in fact, we still need to do really needs-based small group instruction. So if you have children with needs that are around foundational skills, then you want to be doing something like this. So, and what was exciting on the heels of all of this happening with Dr. Walpole too is that Dr. Julia Lindsey, and she is on our next slide, she had been a student of Dr. Nell Dukes when she was here in Michigan, and now she's graduated, so she is Dr. Julia Lindsey, and she provided some things free, and they're still free, decodables for kids to be able to read. And Dr. Walpole's book also has decodables in it, but as another way for kids to practice in context, I've recommended to people, you have Dr. Walpole's book and Dr. McKenna's book, who sadly he has since passed since the book has been published, so we can't talk with him. But his spirit's definitely alive in that and how he wants to engage kids. And when Dr. Lindsey came out with her decodables, I would say to people, well, you have the book and you have the lessons with a decodable, but you could also use Dr. Lindsey's book that also shows these different patterns. And so it's another level, another context for kids to read in, and that it's been written by someone who's a researcher and who has a degree in literacy, language, and culture. And many of them are around a beautiful young woman who happens to be Black, and her name is Gia. And there's awesome, like, genius Gia. I mean, I just love that that's her name, right? There's alliteration, but showing her that she's a genius, right? As this young woman. And so once Julia was finished with all of her degree, she started writing this book. And that's the next part I'm really talking about that I'm excited about, because this book, Reading Above the Fray, it's about this conversation that you mentioned, Leah. There's a lot of like, we shouldn't do this. Well, what should we do? And so it's such a friendly book that really, it explains what we mean by all these big words in literacy. And then her idea is like, okay, if you're doing, this is what we need to do. This is what research said, and it says, and it matches up to our essential practices. And then she'll say, well, here's a swap you could do. If you have a curricular resource that doesn't do this, here's something you could do instead. And they're really short 10 to 15 minute routines. The side story of all of this, as Dr. Lindsey, as Julia was writing this book, I was asked to review it and see if I'd be willing to endorse it. And I was thrilled to endorse it because I said it makes decoding fun, but it also values children, and it mentions how you continue to value children, the cultures that they are coming from, the families that they live with, and how you bring them into this. And I just thought she does bring that up in her book. And it really gives teachers practical things to do, whether you're tutoring or whether you're teaching in the classroom. These are practical things, and teachers need that, right? They're working really hard, just like you said, Leah, and curriculums aren't perfect. They really just aren't. And so we have to just think, well, what do we do better? So as I was reviewing your book and I thought, I can't wait for this to come out, I was thinking about another project I was working on, which was with Detroit Public Television, who had just launched the Michigan Learning Channel. And they had asked us to help them create literacy lessons. And my job was to make sure they were aligned to research practice and start to think about how we'd scope that out, and then to work with coaches from around the state, who then worked with Michigan certified teachers to teach these lessons. And so Read, Write, Roar, which is our we're going to come back to this talk about Dr. Lindsey in a minute with the offering that I have to share with you today. But if we move on to this next slide that shows just a little clip of the Read, Write, Roar image, Read, Write, Roar is a new show. I guess we launched in April of 21. So this is a kindergarten through grade 3 program that's fully done. There's 6 pre-K episodes right now, and actually they're available with Spanish and in Arabic as well. The pre-K ones, not the K to 3 yet. But our partnership between Detroit Public Television and MAISA allowed us to, in 18 months, film 224 episodes for this literacy show that matched the essential instructional practices. And the layer that adds Dr. Lindsey is, as I was reading things she was describing in her book about letter alphabet knowledge and instruction, I thought, oh my goodness, this is our segment we do that's called Letter Heroes. This is an example of what Julia's book is saying. And then she was talking about ways that we can make words, and she mentions word ladders. And I was like, we have a word ladder segment right in the show. And then she talks about other building words. And one of the things I used to do in first grade was mystery word. And it's basically similar to Patricia Cunningham's like making words or building words you might hear about. And so kids try and unscramble letters to solve a mystery word. But what you're doing is you're building little words, 2-letter words, 3-letter words, 4-letter words, all along the way, so that you can then solve that mystery word at the end, and you're practicing skills that you've just been taught. So I was so excited and got the okay and the backing from MAISA to bring Dr. Lindsey together with what we have on Read, Write, Roar and offer a free professional learning. And this is the first time that we're offering something like this online virtually to like everybody in the state. So it was really important to say, how can we give this access to all educators, including any of you that are serving kids after school and tutoring. And so on the next page is our official invitation for you to join us in the upcoming webinar series that we have, which will be everybody who joins us will get a copy of Dr. Lindsey's book for free. We'll send you a Google form after you register, and you'll tell us where you would like the book mailed. We'll meet 4 times for an hour, and there'll be some reading in between, but we'll go over some of the really fundamental pieces of the text that like everybody should know who's working with children that are in this stage of really developing foundational skills. And then what my job is in this is kind of framing that in terms of the essential practices and how it's connected there. And also then we're going to show some segments from Read, Write, Roar, so that after we learn about a practice, this swap you could do with Dr. Lindsey, we can show you a clip from Read, Write, Roar's episode, so you can, it always helps to see a model, right? So it'll give you a model of like, this is one way this could look, and then give people a chance to go and think about that and maybe even actually try it. And so I've also created some resources for the Michigan Learning Channel that you can have a free template of like doing a word letter. I have a free template for doing a mystery word. And so we really want to just gift things to people to make your work easier, because our kids deserve this, and all of them deserve to have access to high quality instruction. So officially, you're all invited, and we hope that you'd be able to join us. And if that's not something you can do, but you're really passionate about literacy, or you do that and you want to learn more, I also just wanted to let you know there are free modules that go over each of those 10 instructional practices. And so on the next slide, there's just a little link. If you go to literacyessentials.org, you can see all of our modules that are there. We have modules for pre-K to 3. We have for pre-K and K to 3, and then there's modules for school-wide or center-wide, you know, how you're organizing literacy at a center. Those are for free for you. And the last professional learning free access I want to share with you today is that with the Michigan Learning Channel, they asked us to kind of host some professional learning last year as Read, Write, Roar was launching. And so the last slide that we have for you today is to show you, if you want to learn more about what Read, Write, Roar is about and what the lessons look like and how they're connected to each of the practices, there's a video archive that you could watch the videos from these, and then you can get the materials, some of which will be repeated and we'll have more context. You know, we'll talk about that in connection with Dr. Lindsey's book in the upcoming offering. But really, I'm just thankful that you are all like partnering and willing to do this work. And I'm grateful for the kids that you're going to be serving as part of your work. And I'm grateful that 313 Reads exists, and hope that you can join us or use any of these other materials so that you have a place to start to feel more efficacious and feel good about yourselves doing this hard work. So I just talked a lot, but thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Amazing, talking a lot. Thank you so much. You know, and this is something that from the community educator lens, you know, folks are so passionate about the work, you know, and again, it's like how we give them tools. And Literacy Essentials is a set of tools that are curriculum agnostic. It's not about using any specific curriculum. So that's just such a great fit for community-based literacy educators, you know, that they can just really deploy them strategically. And so many of them are building just from a strengths lens of like where folks already are, like that's at the heart of it. And then I think the last thing I want to lift up before I pass it back to you, Elise, to bring us home is we're really excited for this, especially because Dr. Lindsey, you know, a lot of her work has been informed overall by her lenses of justice and literacy for liberation, and really excited by her work with the Center for Black Educator Development and their Freedom School Literacy Academy. And we're really excited to have Freedom School Literacy Academy here in Detroit. And my little humans actually attended virtually when it was actually, you know, housed in Philly. They attended virtually during COVID. So we've experienced that like as a family end too. So really excited that, you know, Dr. Lindsey's work is really looking really carefully at these very clear, tangible, actionable ways to teach co-based instruction, but always with the lens of like what's culturally sustaining, right? That these aren't separate things, but that they're bound together. So I just want to lift that up, and so we're really excited for that. And Elisa, I'll pass it back to you.
I'm so glad that you did it. Sorry, too. I forgot at least to even say that. And she did use some of Dr. Walpole's lessons too with Freedom Schools. We had lots of conversations. That's how I even got to meet her in the first place. And she really does. That's how she frames everything that she does. And we are just very fortunate to have her partnership in this work, and that she's been in the trenches of this, you know, like she's coming from an area where she knows, she's not just talking about it either. She's a practitioner herself. So I'm really glad that you raised that. I'm sorry to take another extra second.
Elise, you're muted.
There we go. Thank you both so very much. Really appreciate this conversation today. And thank you to everyone who's watching. We hope that we've added to your knowledge bank and helped further equip you in your work toward literacy, access, equity, and justice to support grade level reading. Please visit our website to access additional resources, to sign up for a monthly newsletter, or for more information about the Coalition. And you can access all of our videos from our professional learning series on our Facebook page. Today's 313 Reads Professional Learning Series was made possible by the Skillman Foundation and the United Way of Southeastern Michigan. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.